Well, thank you all again very much for coming. So my name is Mathrick, I'm a naturopath, and I'm really blown away by the power of fermented foods. I think it's interesting how we don't think about bacteria as something that's beneficial. We would normally think of it, oh no, bugs, you know. And yet bacteria is from the kingdom of bacteria, which of course is as diverse as the kingdom of plants, where you have cacti and roses, or as diverse as the kingdom of animals, where you have giraffes and fish. You know, so it's just such a wide array of organisms, and there are some which are just so incredibly beneficial for our systems. And at this point in time, with an enormous amount of challenges to our gastrointestinal tract and to our system overall, I think that fermented foods just pose an incredibly simple and incredibly elegant solution to a lot of issues. So I just want to spend 10 minutes or so kind of explaining why I'm so excited about them, and maybe generate a few thinkings, and we'll have more discussion at the end to talk more about it. So essentially, fermented foods are foods that have been worked on by bacteria, or essentially the fermentation process is essentially a sugar of some sort being changed into an acid or into another form of food, so generally an acid or an alcohol. And so it's that working of the food from a sugar, a carbohydrate, which of course isn't just sugar, but also any complex carbohydrate. So you have lots of different types of saccharides or those molecules, those molecular structures which can be worked on. And so both bacteria and fungi are involved. So there's actually two kingdoms involved in the fermentation process. And so obviously our gastrointestinal tract is full of bacteria, and we are, as a matter of fact, 10 times more microbial cells than human cells. We are more bug than human. We are more microbe than human. I mean, that's a profound fact, that we walk around thinking we're human, but we're actually 10 times more microbes than humans. And so if we get our balance out of whack with our microbial gut flora, then obviously issues can happen. And so what is happening is we've got this enormous rise in allergies, an enormous rise in autism, and so there's the GAP diet, the gut and psychology syndrome, which is a diet based on this idea that your gut biology is directly affecting your mental health and well-being. So, and that's, I think, just stands to reason, So Hippocrates started with, death starts in the bowel, and when I went to university to study naturopathy, it was like, look at the gut first, look to the gut for the issues. And there is an incredibly complex science that's evolving about bacteria, and we're looking not just at bacteria species, we're looking at the strains of those species. So we know about lactobacillus, but now there's lactobacillus acidophilus LLP, or there's different strains which are just so much more than the species. That kind of goes into more minute things, because of course those more minute things can be patented. So what we're going to do today is wild ferments. We're going to do more wild ferments than kind of cultured ferments, but we'll talk more about that as we go on. But essentially, I just want to instill in some kind of awe, I guess, about how amazing it is that we've got all these microbes which can help us, and that we can take them into our diet every day, and we can use them every day to help furnish our gastrointestinal tract, which of course is the seat of the immune function. So immune function is basically educated through what's going on in our guts. And we know that obviously from breastfeeding or from vaginal birth, breastfeeding, all the stats that are coming out on C-sections and the children's propensity to allergies, etc. So just helping that. And there are just a few things that I want to highlight about what fermentation does to food. And one of the things that's not really spoken of so much is that it actually changes the nutrients, and it changes the anti-nutrients. So things like phytic acid and oxalic acid, which are found naturally in foods and other plants' defenses, inhibit the absorption of a few really important minerals in our gastrointestinal tract. So if we're eating a lot of raw spinach, it's not great. Even Popeye used canned spinach. So you need to break down those oxalates in order to be able to really absorb those nutrients. And so it's okay to have some raw food, some raw spinach is okay, but having raw spinach every day, so the people who went crazy on the green smoothies, it's not great because you're actually building up oxalates. And so what happens with fermentation is that it actually starts to break down some of those anti-nutrients like oxalates and phytic acids, and a whole range of them are written there on your handout sheet. Fermented food is a slow process. It takes a while. It doesn't take a lot of time for us to do it. It just takes the bacteria some time to get it together to break everything down. So that's, that's something that's not really aligned with the speed of life that we run at. But with a little bit of management, it's not too difficult to fit it into our lifestyle, and allowing those bacteria the time to really ferment and to culture the food that we're having. And it's shown that it also retains and builds new nutrients as well. So your capacity to build vitamin B12 in the diet, in the bowel, the biotin, vitamin K, all of these different minor nutrients can actually be enhanced through the fermentation process as well. And then with things like sourdough and also with yogurt, which we're not going to be really doing today, what happens with when the fermentation process is going on there is it actually breaks down some of the lactose, which is the milk sugar, and also some of the gluten. And so this idea of everyone being milk intolerant, can't drink milk, can't have gluten, is it actually okay then for them to be able to have fermented gluten or fermented fermented milk products? So, and the chances are that it is, because people who are lactose deficient, they can have half a cup of yogurt, generally speaking. And people who are gluten intolerant or gluten sensitive and wheat sensitive fare way better on traditionally fermented sourdoughs, which is fermented for 6 hours. So those bacteria are actually breaking down some of those anti-nutrients which our digestive systems have trouble, absorbing as well. The other thing about a lot of the fermented foods is that they've got that acidic taste. So that acidic taste is actually creating a pH in the gut, which nourishes good bacterial growth. When we have, because we always think, we've got to be alkaline, but actually our gut needs to be acidic, and our interior, inside the donut, if you like, if we've got a hole and the rest of it's a donut, inside the dough of the donut needs to be more on the alkaline side of a very, very small spectrum of pH. But the gut itself actually is functioning better when it has a high acidic pH. And what the fermented foods, because they're lactoacidophilous, they're acid environments, or they're a little bit sour, which again our palate's not so used to sour, that encourages good bacteria to grow even more. So we want to be able to create an environment for good bacteria to grow in, not an environment for the negative bacteria to grow in or to start to take hold, because then, obviously things like candida can happen, but also if the gut biome hasn't got a good integrity, then it can slowly erode away slightly and then expose some of the what they call gut junctions, which hold the cells of the gut together, which are the enterocytes. And then you start getting a leaky gut syndrome, what they call leaky gut syndrome, just by not having the right bacteria there. So by creating the right acidic environment, you're inviting the good bacteria to come into your body, and then you're fortifying not just your gastrointestinal health, so you're pooing better and you're not as flatulent and you feel better, like things are actually digesting better, but you're also enhancing your immunological system. You're informing, like all of the gut biome is continually informing your immune system, because of course this is you take something and put it into your mouth and it becomes you. I mean, you need to have a really good defense field there in order to be able to sort out what's good for me and what's not good for me, to be able to protect yourself from things that aren't good. But also you don't want to be reacting to things which are foods just because that integrity is down. I don't know if that makes sense though. Yeah, great. So it's super duper important for us, and there are an enormous amount of benefits, and I've listed them there. And I think one of the key ones which I find really interesting is that it enhances our way of thinking. So just reflecting again on that gut, the gut and psychology syndrome idea. Also, with the aging population and dementia becoming increasingly prevalent, it's also suggested that there's an enormous correlation between gut biota and the brain-blood barrier's integrity. So the brain-blood barrier is a barrier that essentially stops the blood that's circulating in the body to just going straight into the brain. So it's a little capillary system which helps to filter through that, to protect the brain essentially from things that are running around the body that the body can handle, that the brain is too sensitive to. So that brain-blood barrier tends to get eroded over time with aging, if you like, or with the amount of toxins and the amount of onslaught and challenges we're having. And what seems to be coming out now in the science is that the integrity of your gut biome is really imperative on how good that brain-blood barrier is and allowing you to think clearly. And of course, when you're kind of a bit from having have too many croissants or something, or something that doesn't work for your system and how it kind of fogs you up. But then when you're fasted or you've done something to really clear out your system and nourish it, just how clear your brain is. So it kind of stands to reason, but I think it's interesting that that's coming out in the literature as well. So that's pretty groovy. So let's finish there.